What's up, Graceway? We have a special Throwback Thursday for you this week. Kirk Martin from Celebrate Calm is here with us, and we're going to show you his teaching from our parenting conference that he led. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Kirk's message.
I wanted to start off this morning and do some things on discipline. And I'm going to roll pretty quickly this morning to try to give you, put a lot of meat on what we kind of established last night. So a few things with discipline. To me, discipline is something you do for your child, not to your child, right? It's a gift that you give them. 3 questions I always ask when I'm disciplining my child is 1, am I teaching him or her something? Because discipline means literally to teach, not punish, not give consequences. 2, am I showing him or her a different way to do it next time? And 3, am I building my relationship with my child? Because in a lot of discipline that I was brought up with, the discipline was just kind of harsh to get you to stop behaving a certain way. But I believe that good discipline should lead you to a closer, more trusting relationship with your child. And we'll kind of show that throughout this morning. Because I really believe this, when it comes down to it, relationships change behavior. Techniques, strategies are good. Consequences can be fine, but strong-willed kids don't care about it. But it's the relationship that ultimately gets it. I remember one time Casey and I were, he was in his teen years and he wanted to do something and I'd said no. And so we were kind of going round and round because I allowed him at times to give his viewpoint, and your kids are very bright. And he was making some good points, and I was like, it's a good point, but the answer is still no. And so at the end of the day, look, I can always fall back on the fact I'm dad, what I say goes. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to go there, and I just looked at him and I said, Casey, I just have one question. Do you trust me? Do you trust that I have your best interests at heart? Do you trust me that I'm looking out for you, even if you don't like the decision? And he kind of eventually came back and he said, I don't like your choice. I don't necessarily like you right now, but I do trust you, Dad. And that was kind of my trump card from then on, is to go the trust angle. It's kind of a cool thing. So early on when I was a dad, because of my dad, how he taught me to do it, I thought my job was to be the chief disciplinarian in the home. Like, I thought my job was to kind of roam through the house. You catch your kids and your wife doing things wrong, and then you correct them. And apparently, wives don't like that. So I got it into my head and finally figured out, what if my job is to be the chief source of wisdom in my home? What if my job is to give my kids wisdom so that they can begin to control themselves and I don't have to roam around the house just barking all the time? So we're going to get into that, kind of how to do that. One of my favorite things that we didn't get into last night was this. So do any of you have kids who kind of struggle in school a little bit with behavior, right? A lot of, when we do teaching in schools, I train a lot of teachers. We talk about a lot of our schools use those red, yellow, green behavior charts. And they don't work, because for most of our kids, what happens is this. School begins at 8 a.m. By 8:05, I'm already on red. And you know what your kids say? If I'm going to be on red today, I may as well just double down and make it a really bad day. Because the truth is, I'm never making it to green, right? And by 2:20 in the afternoon, I'm on green, and then all of a sudden your kids do something impulsive at the end of the day, and they go right to red. And so they eventually just give up. So think about this, 2 different ways to handle behavior. Typically what we do is we wait for the child to mess up. Child does something wrong, we react to it and give the child a consequence. So what we're really doing is reacting to failure. But what if I know that my child struggles in a certain area, and proactively I give him or her tools to succeed so they don't get to the failure in the first place? That will also eliminate a lot of the lying, because lying comes from I'm in trouble and don't want the consequence. Does that make sense conceptually? So let's go through a few tools. Some of these are going to be for the classroom, but you can apply them to every kind of everyday life. How many of you have kids who struggle with focus and attention? Okay, right? Not a shocker these days. So, this is a sensory strip. Nothing magical about it. It's double-sided tape, and then on this side are some little textury strips that we got from an arts and crafts store. Science and research say when kids play with textured objects, it actually improves concentration. Right? How many of you have kids with busy hands, right? They're doing things with their hands. So look, just saying hands to yourself will never work. They have to do something with those hands. So what we do with this is, say this is a desk at school, we tape this right underneath the desk. That way a child can be sitting in class all day long playing with this thing. It doesn't make any noise. He can't whack his classmate in the face with it. Okay, it doesn't change the entire school day, but a few times when I was zoning out or wanted to play with my classmate's face or hair, I had something appropriate to play with. Remember, whenever you take away something inappropriate, give them something appropriate to do. That's a tool. How many of you have kids who, do any of you have kids who just struggle with just impulse control? They get up and walk around in class, right? So let's say, thank you for sitting in the same spot, Christian. Christian is in my class, and most of you do, right? Everybody comes back to their familiar spots. So Christian's in my class. He can be in 3rd grade, 8th grade, 11th grade, doesn't matter to me. But I know that after about 16 minutes, Christian's going to get bored in my class. He's going to get up, walk around the classroom, start talking to people, and the teacher's going to be, hey, Christian, hey, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. Look. By the way, we mentioned last night, watch with the eye contact stuff. Many of your kids think better, listen better when they're looking away. Don't worry about that. I have a lot of kids in, do any of your kids get in trouble in circle time? Little kids? Okay, if they do, don't worry about it, right? Because they're like, sit on the square. Your strong-willed kids aren't going to sit on the stupid square. Why? Because it's arbitrary and dumb, right? And that's how they view things. I know for some of you who are rule followers, that's like, oh, no, you have to sit on the square. Why? Now, we'll get into this a little bit later, how your kids think, but it's arbitrary, so they're not. So allow them to lie back on their backs and look up at the ceiling. They'll pay perfect attention when they're doing that. It just freaks teachers out because we associate eye contact with respect. Look, many of your strong-willed kids as teenagers, they're giving you eye contact, but they're flipping you off in their brains, right? So it has nothing to do. So, by the way, don't worry when you get those calls like, your daughter can't sit still in circle time. You know why? Because circle time's stupid. After you're 5, you never have to sit in a circle, okay? Nobody at your office is going to be like, hey, Frank, 3 o'clock in the conference room, circle time, right? Look, you're going to have, I really mean this, I'm not being funny, you're going to have to, with your strong-willed kids, they're going to challenge things. And you're going to have to determine what's really important and what's not. Because my natural view in life is if I have a rule, it's that rule is meant to be broken somehow or find a way around it. And your kids are going to find all those arbitrary things, and you're going to have to weigh it and say, it's not really important that she sits perfectly still when she's 5, right? Am I going to project out and think, oh, she's not going to be successful in life? And you're going to have to give her tools, and we'll get into that in a minute, but you're just going to have to decide what's really important with the strong-willed kids. Because many of your strong-willed kids in school, they're just going to be in trouble a lot. And that's sometimes their issue, and sometimes it's just the arbitrary nature of how we do things. Same in church. Churches have all kinds of arbitrary things that we just came up with that are traditions, and your kids are going to kick against those. So I'm going to pull Christian aside, and I say, Christian, I could really use your help. How many of you know for strong-willed kids, magical words? They love helping other adults. So listen, when I'm teaching in class, my mouth gets really dry, and I know you need to move. I like talking to kids honestly about the way they're made, right? I don't have to put a diagnosis like, it's clear that you have ADHD. I don't need to know a diagnosis. I just notice with some kids, if I walk into a classroom and a child's doing this, I'm like, that kid's not sitting still for 50 minutes. He needs to move. So Christian, I need your help. Here's what we're going to do. I want you to get water for me, refill my water bottle while I'm teaching. So you and I are going to have a secret signal. So when I'm teaching and I do this or this, here's what I want you to do. You get up out of your seat, you come up to my desk, you grab my water bottle. You're going to take it to the back of the room and refill it. You're going to bring it up, sit on the desk, you sit down. You're not going to talk to anybody. You are not going to distract anybody. You're going to be Mr. Invisible. You up for that? Little kids love that. Older kids will get beat up for being Mr. Invisible, so leave that part out. So, notice, remember we talked last night about tone of voice. I can talk to a strong-willed child in an even matter-of-fact tone like an adult, and they'll take it all day long. You're not going to distract anybody. As soon as I get a little bit snotty, You know what, Christian? Every time I ask you to do a job, that snotty tone you use with your kids immediately provokes in them, screw you, right? And the truth is, if someone talks to you in a snotty tone, that's how you react, right? So go even, matter of fact. So I'm teaching in class, 16 minutes in, I notice that he starts to move a little bit, and I give him the signal. Comes up, grabs the water bottle, takes it to the back of the room, refills it, comes up, sits on my desk. I get to end that scene with, hey, good job, thank you. Lots of positive affirmation for these kids, right? But here's a little key. Don't do that overt praise. Oh, buddy, you did such a good job. Because you know what it sounds like? Fake. It sounds like this. We never thought you'd actually make a good choice, and you just did, so let's have a party. My praise for strong-willed kids is very low-key. It's a nice job. Like how you did that. And I often do it as drive-by praise. I'm planting a lot of seeds. Like how you handle that situation. I don't stand there and look at them and be like, I just want to tell you what a good choice you made, because it's awkward. And they're like, you're a good dad too, right? Like, I don't need the response. I'm throwing in a lot of seeds. I like praising for facts, right? Of little things like, oh, you've always been good at adding numbers in your head. So you can't argue with that, right? It's not up for debate. It's just I'm throwing out a little fact. So he comes up, does the job, and here's why I like it. I gave him a very specific job to do. I didn't say, hey, little guy with ADD brain, if you get bored in my class, just run around. Very specific. Get the water bottle, take it to the back. It took him 23 seconds to do that. I gave him 23 seconds of appropriate movement within my boundaries. Does that make sense? I gave him a concrete tool. He can hold it. He can feel it. My OCD kids, I used to put a red magic marker line on the bottle and say, I need this refilled exactly to that red line. And the OCD kids would be in the back like pouring it out and refilling it, because that is very settling to them. How many of you, when life feels like it's out of control at night, right, your kids can't control your kids or your spouse, how many of you go to your kitchen and clean your kitchen sink? Anybody do that? Right? And here's what you're saying. The rest of my life is out of control, but my sink is spotless. And you walk by it all night long because you're like, at least something in my life is in order, and it feels really good. Is this distracting you guys? What kind of cheap water bottles do you buy at Raceway? Jeez. Now I've got to bring my own. All the OCD people. Now sometimes I'll keep using that bottle and purposefully drip just to irritate people who are kind of OCD, because that's your issue, but I won't do that this morning. So, thanks for the water. So, does that make sense? So remember for later that kitchen sink moment, because when your kids are back there refilling that water bottle, here's what it feels like. Because I don't always get along with the other kids. I don't always get invited to the class birthday party. I didn't even know what page of the math book I was supposed to be turned to, but I'm good at doing my jobs. And here's a big note. If you're taking notes, I'd write this one down. I just created a success. I know that sounds dumb. And for many of you who are rule-following, just naturally good people, you're like, well, why wouldn't you do your best? And why wouldn't you just be good? For many of your kids, it is not second nature to them to do that. It's second nature just to push and always push. And if they're always failing, you have to create successes. Otherwise, it will be, their whole childhood will end up just being, why can't you ever do things well? And you're in trouble, and I'm going to take this away. Does that make sense? So creating success is one of my favorite things to do with kids. Let me do one more example. Do any of you have kids who blurt out? Right? So, by the way, notice your kids, the very traits that usually irritate you most are the very traits they're going to use in life to be successful. We were out teaching in California, and we had a day off, so we went hiking in Yosemite. I always find the parents of the weird little kids. So we're hiking through the woods, and I'm talking to this family. I'm like, well, tell me about your son. Well, when he was a little kid, he never shut up. All he did was talk, and he memorized useless facts and talked about them. And I was like, what is he doing today? Well, he's the play-by-play announcer for the Boston Red Sox farm team. Guess what he gets paid to do? Not shut up. And because he can memorize weird little facts, he's really interesting on the radio. So those things that really annoy you and you want to change, sometimes you have to embrace those and use those. Quick little one. How many of you have kids, and this is more for later, but I'm going to do it now. How many of you have kids who have a weird little obsession over something, right? And we always want to be like, you can't do that. So we were in Dallas, and this family's like, all our son talks about are elevators. Elevators, elevators, elevators. And that's all they want to talk about. And you're like, we got to do homework. We got to get stuff done. I can use that love for elevators, and you have to feed their curiosity. It's really important. So here's 2 ways to handle that. Hey, here's the deal. There's a Hilton down the street. It's got 34 floors and 3 elevators. You get your homework done in the next 45 minutes. I'll take you down to the Hilton. You can ride those elevators for an hour. Or better yet, why don't you grab your backpack? We'll go down to the Hilton. I'll sit you right in the floor of the elevator. You can go right up and down, do your homework. I'll go to the hotel bar for a couple hours, and then I'll come back. When I come back, guess what? Homework's probably going to be done. Why? Because he gets his brain stimulated by going up and down on that elevator, and he probably will meet someone on the elevator who's like, what are you doing in the elevator? And your kids to other people love your kids, right? Because they don't have to live with them. And so, no, it's partly true, and your kids are so curious. And you're like, yeah, your curiosity is fine, but we've got other arbitrary stuff to do, right? You memorize this information you'll never use in life, but your passion that God somehow planted in you, forget that because you don't get grades for it. And you're really going to have to watch that because you're going to have to make some decisions with these kids. What do you value? Right? Do you value what, and we do a lot of training in schools, so I'm not against the schools, but most of what's happening in there is very arbitrary and it's not really useful. Whereas God planted, have you ever thought about this? It's an interesting thought. You don't determine what you're curious about, for the most part. You just have an inclination to enjoy something and be curious about it. You didn't wake up one day usually and just say, I think I'm going to be really curious about this subject. It's there. And your kids have it. And the hardest part for you is going to be, how do I feed that passion and still get them through school sometimes? But you've got to feed those passions. So we've got a kid who blurts out in class because he's a talker, right? And I can't eliminate the talking. I can't do it. But I can help with that. So typically what happens in our class is, what's your name, Patrick Mahomes? Robert, good easy name. I don't want to pick on Christian the whole time. So Robert blurts out, and traditional response is going to be, Robert, how many times have I told you not to blurt out in my class? It's rude. If you keep blurting out, you're going to miss I'm going to take away recess, and then everything's negative, and those kids shut down. By the way, let me interject this one, because it just popped in my head. It's a great example. Do any of you have kids who will read right in the middle of their class, right? And they're in math class and they just pick up a book. And now the teacher's in an awkward position of like, don't read, right? And some of you have that at home, right? Because your kids want to stay up and read in bed or read at the table. Now, personally, if Casey had ever picked up a book when he was little, I've been like, you can read anytime you want. He's an awesome reader now. And that's again why I don't want you to project out. I say it all the time. Casey was virtually useless as a child. He was. He wasn't that great, but he is amazing as a young man. He is a beast. He reads like crazy, but he didn't when he was a kid, so don't project out. So let's say, Christian, back to Christian. Christian's reading a book in the middle of the class. Look, this stuff, it's not so much about the child as how we view things. Because typical response is, Christian, it's math class. Put away your book. Put away your book. If you don't put away your book, I'm going to confiscate it. And that child right then, and forgive me for the language, you know what he's going to say? Screw you. For the rest of the year, I will be difficult on purpose. Screw you. And I know for the good people out there, you're like, why? Why can't you just put the book down? It's not that hard. And I agree with that. But if you're wired like this, that's not how they think. So watch, same situation, same amount of time taken, and watch the difference in how I address him. Christian, you know what I love? I love that you're curious. You read because you're curious. It's math class right now, so you got to put away the book. But after lunch, I'll give you 2 minutes to talk to the rest of the class and tell them what you're reading, because I want everybody else to be as curious as you are. See, now I just built the kid up. He put his book away. Does that make sense? I'm not allowing him to get away with it. But I interjected, you're going to put the bullet with it. But I'm giving an opportunity, and now I built him up because the fact that he's reading is a really good thing. But it doesn't always fit within the rules. And you're going to have to determine your home, especially Christian families sometimes really struggle with this stuff, because if you grew up in a very law-based environment, you're going to have all these little things and all these little rules, and you're really going to have to decide, like, is that really important? Or am I just doing that because I don't want to be embarrassed, right? Or because I grew up like that. And so you're going to have to wrestle with your spouse over what do we enforce and what don't we. I'll do this a little bit later, but like chores. Casey was not good at he never did his chores. He was not a chore kid. How many of you have like multiple kids? Okay, so if you have a strong-willed, here's how it's going to work. We want each of our children to do the same number of chores. Not going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. I give the kids chores. Your little Robert isn't going to do his chores. He's going to pay his brother to do some of them and manipulate his sister. And your appropriate response is, Robert, that's good thinking, because doing chores is boring and stupid. But you love money, you love talking, you love getting out in the neighborhood and making money, and with that money, you pay your brother to do some of your chores. That's called delegation. And guess what? You're going to do it one day when you own your business, because God knows nobody's ever going to hire you because you don't like authority figures. So, good training, not funny, true. Raise your kids according to the way they're made. Most of your strong-willed kids are not going to grow up and sit in a nice little corporate thing in a seat all day. So you got to train them. And because you're so good at arguing and thinking, and because, look, everybody in here thinks your kids are manipulative, right? True? They're manipulative. I see it as influence. With your insight into human nature, because you're a good thinker and you observe people, you manipulate your sister to do your chores. The real issue that you have is with your daughter, because you need to tell her you need to have some self-respect and speak up for yourself and demand that he pay you to do the chores and stop being a people pleaser. Because if you don't, you're going to grow up and marry a controlling man, which is what 40% of the women in here did. Who did that? Don't raise your hand. Stop, not right in front of everybody. So, look, there's other women who are like, oh, I'm glad I didn't raise my hand, but I married a controlling man. So, it's just what happens. That's what my wife did. She married a controlling guy. You know why? Because we'll do that in the marriage one. Perfectly imperfect. My wife's the people pleaser, doesn't speak up for herself. So guess who that attracts? Me, right? We're perfectly imperfect. So we'll do that later. It's awesome. So please don't raise your hands from now on if your husband's sitting next to you. So who married a jerk who mistreats them? I did. Okay, good. I'm just kidding. That's not what she's saying. You just need to work on your stuff. So, and you need to learn how to speak up for yourself. You're not married? Oh, okay. Sorry. Anyway, it was her ex. Good one. So, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Let's keep going. So I come in with the blurting out and watch the conversation. Robert, you know why I love having you in my class? Because you're a good thinker, man. You've got this busy brain. It's always thinking of ideas. You're like a junior Thomas Edison. And so here's what happens. You get one of your ideas, but then you're afraid you're going to forget it because you struggle with short-term memory. How many of your kids struggle with short-term memory? Okay, it's not a disorder. They make everything a disorder. You have short-term memory disorder. It's not a disorder. See, if I ran the world, the note I'd send home from a teacher would be to all the compliant kids, parents. I'm really concerned about your son. He literally sits there and waits for me to tell him what to do. He's got no initiative. He colors within the lines, no creativity, right? He never speaks up because he's afraid to share his ideas. He won't blurt out because he doesn't have any good ideas. I have no idea how he's going to get a job one day. But your strong-willed child, oh, love teaching that child. Do I really? No, they're a pain. But what I love is this child speaks up. He not only doesn't even color in the lines, he turns the paper over and draws something he wants to draw and then colors it how he wants to. I love the creativity. I love that he pushes a little bit. I love his curiosity. He never stops asking questions. pain in the butt, but one day after he gets out of jail, he's going to rule the world, and we want that, right? It depends how you view things. So here's the problem with the short-term memory thing. Kids and people who struggle with short-term memory, the way their brains are made, they tend to be better strategic thinkers. That's why your kids are so good at arguing. It's why when you tell them to do something, their first question is, why? And I know your answer is, because I freaking told you to, and it needs to be done. True? You're like, I'm not interested in your creativity and you actually even thinking. Just do what I told you to do. So we overscheduled you and we don't have time for you to be creative. Just do your stuff, right? And so what we miss with these kids is they actually have an advantage over all the other kids who do really well in school, because all the other kids that do really well in school, a lot of them, they're just following the rules and they're really good. But when you get into the real world, nobody's going to pay you a lot of money just to take directions. Pay you a lot of money because you're going to be a thinker and you're going to be like, I've got a new idea. And you just opened up a new business for me and made me a lot of money. I'll pay you for that because you're the only one willing to risk things and fail because everybody else is too tentative. Does that make sense? So Robert, here's the issue. You struggle with short-term memory, and you're going to struggle with that all through school. And so school's going to be a little tougher for you. I'm not making an excuse, but I'm letting them know school's going to be a little tougher for you because school requires that you have good short-term memory so you can memorize stuff for a test. Good news is, after you graduate from school, you never have to memorize things for a test again the rest of your life. So, you're in my class, you get your idea, but then you're afraid to forget it. You're going to forget, and you blurt out my class, and that's unacceptable. See, the difference between the two is, the first is, why do you keep doing that? That's rude. Please watch assigning motives to your kids' behavior and your spouse's behavior and people, the different political parties, right? Well, they just hate America. No, maybe they just have a different viewpoint, right? And that's where we don't talk. We listened to a political conversation at breakfast this morning at the hotel. It was really intense and really bad. I was like, you guys work together. Like, this isn't ending well. So, but they both, you could hear them both. Behind all of it was, well, you're obviously stupid. You obviously don't care about our country. I was like, well, that's helpful for your conversation. So, but watch the assigning motives. See, one is you're being rude. The other is that's unacceptable in my class. So I'm not letting you get away with it. So does that make sense? Just watch. By the way, strong-willed kids, watch. You're going to say they're lazy. Some of your kids are lazy, but you know what it usually is? They're just not motivated. See, that's two different things. If I'm not motivated, I just don't want to do it. That doesn't mean I'm lazy. And words matter. Because the more you say, like, well, you're just lazy. Okay, next time you ask me to do something, I'm not going to do it. You know why? I'm lazy. You're never on time. Okay, I'm not going to start now. Right? Like all these things, these words are really important that we say. So, Robert, here's the tool I'm going to give you because blurting out my class, and I don't want you to do it. So, imagine this is a ticket. I'm going to call it a talk ticket, a little cardboard talk ticket. I'm going to give you 3 of these every time you come in my classroom. Every day you get 3 talk tickets. Every time you get that impulse to blurt out my class, instead of blurting out, I want you to hold up one of these tickets. I will either say, go ahead, redeem your ticket, share your amazing off-topic idea, because it's always going to be off-topic. I'm a realist. Or zip, because I believe you can hold it until after class. Later that afternoon, Mr. Martin, I want to tell you, there's a new Star Wars game coming out Friday. And he holds up his ticket. And you know, for many of your kids, that's a supreme act of self-control. And watch where the intensity of the adult gets to go now. Robert, you know what was really cool? Back in math class, you wanted to blurt out. You started to blurt out. Then you held up your talk ticket. It's called self-control, my friend. That's how we do it in my classroom. That kid will work his butt off for me in my class. Now, because I believe in him and I'm giving him tools and I'm showing him how to succeed. Now, am I going to get him to stop blurting out entirely? No. When he's little, I might go from 10 times a day to 8 times, and then next year down to 6 times. He'll always blurt out a couple times. And the metric that I use for behavior is progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. As long as I'm getting some progress, I'm good with that. But know that some of your kids are never going to do everything perfectly well. Does that make sense? Okay, so tools, I'll leave it at that with the tools. I really want the conversation between you and your spouse, between you and teachers to be this. When your kids mess up, instead of initially, what consequence are we going to give? go to, okay, what are 2 or 3 tools we could give our child in order to create successes so we can build success, and then ultimately it's a very virtuous cycle. So let's do a tough discipline one, because last night I did all the soft stuff, that listening to your kids. When do we hammer them? So here's when we do it. I sometimes will declare martial law in my home. I like really tough discipline, but the difference is it's not personal, and I don't lose control of myself. In fact, sometimes the best discipline is very low-key. Hey, Christian, I can hear that attitude right now coming out. Listen, all I want you to know is you may continue to talk to me like that, but if you do, you're probably going to lose all your stuff or your life. Right? There's something very, I'm kidding. But there's something very, let me do this one, and I'll do the tough one. So we used to do these camps, so kids would come to our house, 10, 15 kids, and every camp class, there was always a ringleader. There's always one who would start swearing because he wanted to be cool and whatever. And the early days, I was like, hey, cut it out. You do not effing swear I'm just kidding, I didn't say it. No, you do not swear in my house. And that just emboldened him because now he's getting all this intensity. So one day, I step back and I start to think, why is he doing that? And so I got a little insight, so I went and I sat down next to him. Because traditionally it's like, look, we need to have a talk about your behavior because if you don't stop swearing, you're not going to come to my camp. And he's like, I don't care, your camp's stupid, right? So I came and I sat down next to him. I said, Robert, here's the deal. The swearing stuff, not impressed. I know way worse words in lots of different languages. I could teach you some. I'm not impressed. By the way, I love that little not impressed. It's a really nice kind of low key. So here's what I think. I think you're swearing and doing that because you want the other kids to like you and think you're cool. Inadvertently, though, what's happening is they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. Because later when we go to the pool, you're going to be stuck with Mrs. Martin, and she's not fun. And the other kids are just laughing at you. But what I really think you want is you want to be a leader. And I see leadership written all over you, my friend. So, up to you what you want to do. I've got to go get started on lunch for everybody. If you want to come grab me later, I'll show you how to be a leader in my class. And those kids almost always came in, and they'd start cooking with me. They'd never come in and say, could you show me how to be a leader? Because that's awkward. But I knew when they came in, that's what they were looking for. And I did that low-key little thing of like, okay, so here's how we're going to handle it from now on. Does that make sense? It's really cool. So let's do a tough discipline one, and I'll do some more throughout the day. One of my favorite things in working with men is men are often men of few words. And a dad in the home will say, hey, Legos need to be off the floor in the next 12 minutes, or I'm going to build a bonfire in the backyard and burn them. And the man will walk away and not say another word, and 12 minutes later, what do the kids see? Smoke coming up from the backyard. And here's what kids learn very quickly. Oh crap, he meant it. Now, I love that example. For all the men in here, don't go home and say, that guy said we get to burn stuff, right? So that's not what I said. You've got to make sure, men, that your expectations are realistic, because most men have expectations of their kids that are way up here, and all your child has ever done is up to here. In between there will represent a lot of frustration and a broken relationship and a kid who knows I can never please my father, and that is not a good thing. That will ruin kids for life, okay? So I want the tools and all of that, but here's why I do like it. Hey, Robert, you got a choice to make. Legos on the floor, 2 options. And look, watch the tone of voice. I'm not making it personal, and it's not this. I need you to pick up. See, as soon as you're like, I need you to behave, oh, you need me to? I'm in complete control. I don't need you to pick them up. I'm good either way. You pick them up, you live to play another day. You don't, I get to pitch them in a bonfire. I'm really good either way. I'm putting the choice on him. You have a choice to make. I can't always, this is a good principle, I can't always tell you what you're going to do, but I can always tell you what I'm going to do. And so when I give him that choice and I walk away, right, I'm putting it in his court. And then the key to the whole story, and I know this is a little bit extreme-ish, kind of, is I don't talk a lot. I just let him know, and then once I have to do the consequence, I just enforce it. So in our curriculum, you'll hear, and I do a lot of them on the little discipline CD, if you get that, I go through this from a number of different angles, but the key is I will tell you one time, and then I will take action. See, what we do is we tell them, and then we tell them again, and then we berate them because they didn't listen the 8th time, and we talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and then they get us all wound up, right? And now we're like, I can't believe when I was a kid, all these things. And what I want kids to know is when I tell you something, you can trust me. And I don't make it personal. You know what, how are you ever going to be successful in life I used to say this to Casey, how are you ever going to be successful in life if you can't follow simple directions? Right? And I was just killing him every day with little snotty comments instead of just following through and just letting him know, you can trust me. When I tell you something, you can trust me. Does that make sense? Okay, now that's not the only thing I want to do, so don't go home and be like, I'm going to tell you one time. By the way, if you have little kids, they're not going to listen to you the first time. They're not. And I say that for this reason. 4, 5, 6, 7, even 8, some of your kids, even 9. And your strong-willed kids, they're rarely going to listen the first time. And the reason I say that is twofold. One, I want to relieve the pressure off of you as a parent. Because there's this thing of like, well, if I was just a good parent or I was doing it biblically, my kids would listen the first time. What am I doing wrong? Or conversely, I have an awful rebellious child. Because I can tell by emails that come in, I can tell the Christian ones, because the words are always rebellion, right? And they're always really harsh. I'm like, relax with that. So I want to do this example. Let me do one, I want to do this really cool example that'll really kind of push you a little bit. Let me do a couple more really tough ones, and then we'll go to first-time obedience, because that's a big deal in the church. And anyway. So, look, very even matter of fact, I may have done this one last night. Look, you have 3 chores to do. I give you 3 chores to do. In return for your 3 chores, I run 3 services in this home. Meal service, taxi service, laundry service. Right, moms? Pretty much feed them, take them places. So, I just let them know. A lot of nonverbals. 3 chores, that's all I'm asking. In return, feed you, take your place, do your clothes. So, kids don't do their chores. No long lecture about how irresponsible. So when they come to you, you're like, Mom, I've got my soccer practice tonight. 3. You know what they're going to do? They're going to chop your fingers off in the middle of the night because they're going to get tired of the 3, right? Seriously? You're not going to take me to soccer practice because I didn't do my stupid chore? Nope. And the tone, modern day families, sometimes moms are too sweet. Well, honey, any lecture that starts with, honey, it's really important that you may as well just drink. Because nothing really happens good after that, right? It's really important that kids learn to listen to that's all these long-winded, they don't care. And what I want them to know is, the tone is, don't mess with me. Now, sometimes in non-Christian, I'll say, the tone is, don't F with me. Right? Now, don't go home, not you're just saying that word, like, don't F with me. That's what the parenting guy said, or I'm going to burn your stuff, right? No, but the tone is, don't mess with me, because I'm okay with you being upset with me. I just want you to know, if you don't do it, this is what happens. I'm okay with your tantrum. Look, if you want to throw a tantrum, I told all the kids came to our house, I have 2 rules for tantrums. First rule is this: we do everything with excellence in our home. If you're going to have a tantrum, do it well, right? Don't hold back, because my second rule is your tantrums accomplish nothing. I'm an immovable brick wall. Your mood is great phrases. Your mood does not determine or change my mood. That's hard because your kids' moods do change your moods, and that's your issue. True? Own it. Your behavior does not change my behavior. If you want to have a tantrum in the middle of church so that you try to embarrass me in front of all the other parents because you're wailing on the floor, not going to work. I'm responsible for my behavior. The only time I get embarrassed is when I roll around on the floor in the middle of church because you're melting down, right? Or in public. And when I'm firm like that and they know that I'm not going to react, it stops a lot of these things. Does that make sense? It's really interesting. I can't do all the examples. Let me do this one, and then I'll do the really tough one. This is going to be a little softer one. I work with a lot of families with adopted kids, and a lot of adopted kids steal stuff. They steal, they lie, and it's just in there for a lot of different reasons. So here is the question. So example. So there's a kid who's, a lot of strong-willed kids do this. At night, he would get up like at midnight, and he'd go downstairs and he'd like take food. And the parents actually put locks on the cabinets, right? And it sounds a little bit extreme, but when you have certain kids, like, gotta lock stuff up. And so the kid's doing this. So look, there's one of two there's only two real options. Cut it out. It's wrong. You don't get up in the middle of the night, you don't steal. Well, that's pretty obvious, right? But it's not gonna do anything. So this is a little softer approach, but I think it works. This is when I go with that I'm curious thing. And this is a great father-son thing to do where you're going for a walk. And the conversation is like, Robert, I know you know it's wrong to get up in the middle of the night and take stuff. I know you know that's wrong. But I'm curious. I'm curious. What is it that drives you and compels you to do that? And sometimes with these kids, if you ask them, they're going to be like, I don't know. So I try to lead them a little bit and say, is it stimulating? Is it kind of fun in a way to plan this out? Because your strong-willed kids get bored very easily. And one of the reasons they do things to get in trouble is they like the brain stimulation. It's the third column on that chart that you have in the handout. And they like the brain stimulation. And so I identify that and say, is there a certain thrill that you get from getting up in the middle of the night when everybody else is sleeping, walking downstairs? And I try to draw them out. What does that feel like? Does it feel good? It's kind of exciting, right? Because bread stolen in secret is exciting, right? Like doing that is kind of fun. And do you like the challenge of picking the lock? Because they do. And do you like the challenge of trying to get away with it? Because they watch CSI, so they're wiping down the little lock with alcohol, right? They do. They're really, really smart kids. And does it feel good inside sometimes to take that thing in the middle of the night and eat it? And then plan how you're going to get around it. And sometimes you'll hear from kids, they'll be like, yeah, I like the thrill of it. And I like the thrill of like outmaneuvering adults. And so once I figure out what's going on, I can say, I get that. That makes sense to me. It's wrong. I'm not excusing it. Does that make sense? I'm not excusing it. But that makes sense to me that you would do that. So here are a couple options. You can keep doing that if you want, but I'll always figure it out. And I don't tell him I've got cameras in the house because he'll disable them. It'll be like Ocean's 11 or whatever that one was, right? And they're very good at that stuff. I'm going to find out. God will always know. And you have to live with that thing of like, you know, you're going to get in trouble. So here's another option. What if we took all that brain energy that you're expending and emotional energy and put it into building a little business and then giving away a lot of your money to charity to help people? Or what if we put it into starting to do service projects for people? Because we could figure out some thrilling ways to do that that would meet that same need in a positive way rather than using it in a negative way. Does that make sense? Softer approach, but sometimes that hardcore thing, like, you gotta stop that, won't work with these kids. So let's do this example to wrap up this part. It's this. Help me honestly, raise your hands, because there's no like right, wrong answer. How many of you were led to believe the way you were raised, kids are supposed to be immediately obedient? Okay, fairly common. Caveat, this represents my opinion, not the opinion of the church. So it may be different, which means they're wrong. And so I'm just kidding. No, I'm speaking for myself, and I don't want to step on the pastor's toes here, but I think this is a neat way to look at it. So that's how I grew up. I grew up with immediate obedience, right? And so when we had Casey, I would go into his room and say, Casey, listen, 3 chores, I want these 3 things done right now. A, then B, then C, move. And his appropriate response was supposed to be, why, of course, Father, I wasn't texting or playing video games or having fun. I was hoping you'd give me additional chores so I could learn the value of hard work and responsibility, sir. That's what I wanted to hear. How many of you want to hear from your kids? Of course. Guess what? The strong-willed child is never going to say that. Here's what they're going to do. Duh. Chores are stupid. Why don't you do the chores? How many of you have found that you do the chores for your kids? Sometimes it's a little bit easier, isn't it? And you'll be like, are we letting them get away with things? You're like, no, we're just not murdering our child, so we did that for him, right? Look, you guys already know I didn't do, you got to be consistent and follow through. I like that, and you have to, but for the strong-willed kids, it's usually not enough because they don't care, right, what the consequence is. So anyway, they're going to be like, ugh, duh. And that's when you're like, you know what? You're not only going to do your chores, you'll do it with a smile on your face. And then we try to control how you do it. I think I mentioned last night, I used to tell Casey, I don't care if you're miserable. I don't need a good attitude. I just expect you to do it. If you're miserable raking leaves, I'll pop some popcorn, pull up a lawn chair, watch you be miserable in the backyard. Doesn't matter to me. I just want it done. So I began doing it a different way with all the kids who came in the house, and it sounded more like this. Hey, Robert, it's 4:30 in the afternoon. I want these 3 chores done by 7 o'clock. Don't care what order you get them done, how you get them done. 3 chores, 7 o'clock. And then I'd remove myself from the room very, very quickly. I remove myself for 2 reasons. 1, I expect pushback. I expect it from the strong-willed child. Your kids the entire childhood may never say, yes, ma'am, right away. Casey never did when he was a kid. I wouldn't do it. The chores are stupid. You know why they do it? Partly because they're wrestling with it and they're disappointed they don't want to do it, and partly because it irritates you and they know it. And what they're trying to do is draw you into a little fight about what attitude they can and cannot have in your home. When I was a kid, I never did this to my father or I would have gotten beaten. And they just want to do that. I do not believe in immediate obedience, and I'll tell you why. Let's look at Scripture, because sometimes that's a good place to look. God calls Moses out of a burning bush. Moses, go lead my people. What did Moses do? Argued with God. I don't have a good speaking voice. God's like, I'm speaking to you out of a burning freaking bush. That was my translation, right? Out of a burning bush. I think I could give you the words. I know, but I didn't take the Covey leadership seminar. I'm not a good leader. God got so frustrated, he threw that, right? He got frustrated with Moses. Moses was not immediately obedient. How about Abraham? Abraham was not immediately obedient. He had sex with another woman and spawned a lot of fun stuff in the Middle East. What about King David? He was a man after God's own heart, except when he was after hot Bathsheba. Adultery and had her husband killed. Jacob, a father of our faith, conspires with his mother to deceive his father, steals the birthright. Horrible person. True? And yet God chooses to use them. Wrestle with that sometime. God used a lot of really bad people. He didn't use all the good people, because sometimes good people are too timid. Here's Jacob, deceiver. Is that his name? His name's Deceiver. Okay, Deceiver, you're going to be a father of the faith. That's why I kind of believe in Scripture. Because if I was God and I wanted to have a religion, I wouldn't choose such screwed up people as my, do you know what I mean? King David, he's an adulterer and a murderer. Does that make sense, right? So, this one will get you. Jesus, the night before he's crucified, Father, if this cup may pass from me. What's he really asking? Can we do it another way? If I go to the cross, I'm going to be separated from you. Can we do it another way? And watch the words that followed. Nevertheless, not my will be done, but yours. What does nevertheless mean? It means he was wrestling with it. Does that make sense? Here's a good parable. I'm going to do, when I do the sermon tomorrow morning, we're going to do the prodigal son. It's really, really instructive. But here's a good parable. I think it's Matthew 21. Father has 2 sons. Sons, go into my vineyard, do my work. The one son was, of course, Father, I love vineyard work. He was the Eddie Haskell of his day. Only he didn't go and do the work. The other son, vineyard work, stupid. That's your child. And in the parable, Jesus says, the immediately obstinate son, later, changed his mind, went into the vineyard, did his father's work. Which of the 2 sons was obedient to his father's will? The mouthy one, who initially resisted. Does that make sense? So you're not to, it'll blow your brain apart to see. So I give space for kids to be disappointed, and your strong-willed kids, that's why I was like, Robert, 3 chores, 7 o'clock, and I'm out of there. I give him some space because I don't want to stand over him, and let's talk about your attitude. How many of you, when you're having a bad day, Your spouse comes home, and you had a bad day, and your husband stands over you, he's like, I don't know why you're having a bad day. You just need to be grateful. Oh, honey, thank you for the insight. No, you're angry. You need a little bit of space. So when I step away, here's what else it is. It's the idea of ownership, which I'll develop a little bit more in the next session. I don't let kids control my home or classroom, but I give them ownership. Ownership to me is this. I create a big box for kids to live in, and I say, here's your box. I have very clear rules, very clear expectations, very clear boundaries. But within this big box, I will give you some space to do things and do them differently than I would do them, as long as we accomplish the same task. Does that make sense? It's not if you're going to do your homework. Oh no, homework's getting done. Just don't care how you get it done. If you want to do your homework listening to music, sitting in a closet, standing at the kitchen counter, listening to music, eating a snack while you're doing your homework, that's good for many of your kids, ADD kids, go for it, right? I don't care how you get it done. Ownership is this. Do you mind if I go, Pastor, do you mind if I go over a little bit as long as I shorten it up the next time? You guys good? Because I'd rather go a little bit longer at first, and then later you're going to get tired, and I'll finish these thoughts. So I have 2 daughters. My 2 daughters here, and love one and weekend one. Weekend, you're going to be the mean one who said something mean to her sister. And so my natural response can be, young lady, you need to apologize to your sister right now. If you have a strong-willed child, here's what you're going to get. No. If you don't apologize right now, I'm going to take away everything you own. Fine. Sorry, stupid sister. How many of you get that, right? And then half of you are like, pretty close to an apology. I think I'll take it, right? And you're going to have to grade on a curve with your strong-willed child because they're not going to do everything the right way and the way their siblings do it. And you don't want to compare siblings because then you get Cain and Abel. So what if ownership, what if I go up to my daughter and I say, I just walk up next to her and I say, hey, honey, I know that when you're ready, you know the right thing to do. And then I walk away and drink because that's really hard. I don't advocate drinking, don't do it. But I remove myself from her and I give her some space. Now, here's the hard part. She's not going to apologize even tonight. So you're going to be lying in bed talking to your spouse saying, are we raising a sociopath? It's not that hard. Tomorrow morning, remember last night we talked about that when you're ready, gives her some space to own it. If I demand something from a strong-willed child, not happening. I said with some respect, I know you know the right thing to do. Why? Because she knows the right thing to do would apologize. Why? Because you've modeled it 150 times in your home. Tomorrow morning, she will get up and do something thoughtful for her sister as an act of contrition. And your appropriate response is, young lady, shows me you're growing up. Well done. But here's the hard part. She'll never use the words, I'm sorry. Why? Because you want it so badly. But you have to use the words. You have to say, no, she showed contrition. Because look what we do. You need to apologize right now. Fine, I'm sorry. I just forced an apology versus leading her to contrition. By the way, in case I forget it later, and please help me not forget it, humility with a strong-willed child. You are going to want to drill these kids. Their little attitudes, little thing. You want to be like, you know what? You better get your little butt up and bet. You're going to want to go after them because sometimes their attitudes are really horrible, and you're like, you're challenging my authority. I will tell you that humility is a very, very powerful tool that will change their hearts quicker than anything else. But it's going to require humility from you. Because that time where you want to go in and lay down the law, and I'll do an example later, you show some humility and it will break down that wall inside their hearts, and they can be the most loving, awesome kids you will ever have. At the same time, they can curse you out and they have huge hearts. True? And they're really interesting kids, so that's ownership. One more ownership and I'll finish this example. So this is a good fun one. Morning routine, okay? So I wake Christian up, or I tell him, hey, say, Christian, here's how it works in our home. The school bus comes or carpool leaves every morning, 7:22 a.m. I have one goal for you every morning. Be on that bus in that car, 7:22. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you smell like. I don't care what's in your stomach. If you're smart enough to wear the clothes to bed that you're going to wear to school the next day, You can sleep until 7:21. Roll out of bed, grab that Pop-Tart that I know you hoard underneath your bed. You can run out to the school bus. You don't even have to have your shoes on. I don't care. We live in Kansas City, not Canada. You're not going to die. And if at the end of the day he makes the school bus, my appropriate response is, nice job making the bus. Now, what's the hard part? I hate the way he gets ready in the morning. I want him to get up early so I'm not anxious. I want to get some exercise. I want him to eat blueberries and avocado so he has some good healthy fat so his brain's ready to learn. I want all those things. But moms, how many times has this happened that your kids don't eat the right way, that you lectured them and they said, Mom, I didn't realize that what I was putting in my body was so unhealthy, but after you lectured me for the 14th time and showed me the food pyramid, which is all wrong anyway, I'm motivated to eat healthy. It doesn't work that way. The more you get on them, look, this is a good insight. The more you care about something and the more you want it, you know that because you're a difficult person yourself, right? You know it. You don't want to do things because other people want you to. You want to own it, true? And the beautiful part is, once they own stuff in life, they own it for good. And they're going to press on your faith and they're going to push. And if you get defensive, it's going to drive them away because it sounds like you're not confident in your God. God's not shaken when people like challenge him. He's not, oh, I can't believe, look what I did for you. Be confident in it. When they come to it themselves, because of the way you've modeled it, they'll own it, right? Look, if he doesn't eat something healthy in the morning, guess whose stomach it affects? His. So in third period, his stomach's going to hurt. Now, strong-willed kid's not going to give in that easily. He's going to steal other kids' food. So, the appropriate response is, it's called being resourceful, my friend. It's a good skill. Don't worry. How many of your kids won't wear their jacket or want to wear shorts? Can I give you some advice? Let it go. It doesn't matter. Because you're just going to lie to them. Honey, you can't wear shorts. You need to wear a jacket or you're going to catch a cold. That's a lie. You don't catch a cold from cold weather. It's from germs. The truth is, I don't want the other parents or teachers to think that I'm a bad mother letting my child go to school in shorts when it's 25. And that's because you're immature and you're embarrassed, which is your issue, and you need to grow up. True? So, you know I say that with a little bit of love. So, no, it's true. Stop fighting them over stuff. They're smart. If they get cold at the bus stop, they'll steal another child's jacket. They're going to figure it out. Do what? He did that. Good. I mean, he's not stupid. He's immoral, but he's not stupid, okay? So, I'd rather have a smart, immoral kid than a really moral, dumb kid, right? So, I've never thought about that, but probably true. Look what Jacob did. He stole the birthright. Smart kid. That is kind of interesting, isn't it? Nice child you're raising there. So, and you call yourselves Christian. Oh, they go to that grace way. Grace because they give grace for kids who steal jackets from poor kids. Anyway, so, did I get paid yet? Darn it. I need to require that. I did that session with social workers yesterday. I was like, oh, I don't think we got paid. I'm not sure if I'm going to get paid for it. Anyway, so it's not why I do it. I have a big heart, but I do like money. So, I do, you know what's funny with your kids? And I do have this vision in the church. Because the church has problems with money, right? Oh, money's evil, money's evil. You know what my vision is in church is in order to not have all the nonprofits. Because I have friends who are like, oh, I'm going to start a nonprofit. And I was like, well, yeah, now you're going to have to, you don't want to. Now, I support a lot of nonprofits, but with my best friend growing up, where I was like, you just don't want to work. You want to follow your heart. Well, we do all the work, and then you get donations from us. My vision is for your kids is to grow up to be such good entrepreneurs, because being an entrepreneur means you serve other people. You serve and meet needs and teach them how to make money. Because with that money, then give away a lot of money. Does that make sense? The best entrepreneurs, all my Christian friends, give away an extraordinary amount of money. We like making it, but we don't spend it. We live really cheaply. And then we can fund entire ministries. I hope that doesn't sound weird, right? But I have that vision for the church instead, like, I need your money. It's like, no, I'm such a good entrepreneur. Because we do these homeschool conventions, and a guy gets up and speaks before me and is like, well, our ministry is really important. If you would buy our stuff, it would really help us. And then I get up and I'm like, I don't need your help. I want you to buy my resources because they're going to help your family because there's great value. And I want you to actually spend a lot of money on them so you invest. And then when you buy it, I don't advertise what we give away, but it enables me to give away a lot of money because I charge you so much. Anyway, I'm just kidding. No, but it's because we're good. Because look, doing things for free, those guys, and he's one of my best friends in the homeschooling circuit, I talk to him like, you're asking people to give you money because you're doing such good work. Well, I'm able to do good work, but I charge for it, and that causes me to have to make my materials really, really good so that they're valuable to people. Does that make sense? And so don't be afraid of your kids and their love for money, because it's not that love like bad love. It's they're drawn to it. They like the challenge of it, but they have huge hearts. My biggest problem with your kids when they make money is getting them to keep some of it and reinvest it back into businesses because they want to give all of it away. And so teach them how to be wise with it. And I'd love for the next generation to grow up and have all these Christian businesses that are funding all kinds of cool stuff anyway, I hope that makes sense. So the reason I love that example is with the jacket and everything else is I'm giving him ownership. And he eventually, when he determines that eating healthy food is good for, he's going to do it. Doesn't mean you don't feed them healthy food. Do it, but stop worrying. So let me finish up this story, and then we'll take our break, okay? Is it good so far? Okay, so I told you, 3 chores, 7 o'clock, remove myself so I don't hear all your stuff. And because I know he's not going to do it my way. I want it done A, then B, then C. And we say this all the time. Do the A, then B, then C. It's the most efficient way, effective way to do it. If you start with the hardest thing first, you'll get the hardest thing done, get it out of the way. How many of you do this all the time on the weekends? Look, if you just get your work done now, you'll have the rest of the day, right? And it almost never works because it's very rational. By the way, write this down if you have an ADD kid, please. It's not about managing their time, it's about managing their energy. They don't manage time. I don't manage my time. I manage my energy. I work in spurts. My wife works 9 to 5 evenly throughout the day. I hit it hard, inspiration, hard, and then I take a break. And then I hit it hard and take a break. And many of your kids are going to do schoolwork that way. And you have to learn how their energy flow works. Casey does this whole day around morning time, good thinking time. When he gets that afternoon law, he goes and works out because the endorphins kick in. He thinks better. Late afternoon, when he's downtime and not thinking that well, he does like rote work where he doesn't have to think. Teach them how to manage their energy, not their time. It's really, really important. So I walk away. 3 chores, 7 o'clock. I ask him at 4:30. Now, 5 o'clock, has he done anything? Nope. 6 o'clock, he's still laying on the sofa. You don't even drink, but you popped open the first bottle of wine. Why? Because your kid doesn't do anything. He's lazy there. It's 6:30. Has he done anything? No, he's still laying on the floor. You're reminding him, hey, buddy, do you want me to start the lawnmower? How many of you start the chores for your child, hoping they'll come in and take out? Right? It's just the way it works. I used to start, I'd be like, hey, I'll do the outside edge first, and then you come, and then I just did the whole thing. So at 6:34, child finally gets up and starts doing his chores. How many of you, your first thought is going to be, he only left 26 minutes to do his 3 chores. Now he's going to do a half job, right? Because you're projecting out, if you don't do everything with excellence, right? By the way, that phrase of you need to do your best at everything, that's a lie. Stop with that. Because that's hurting do everything to the best of your ability. You can't do everything to the best of your ability. You do the right things to the best of your ability. True? And we get that thing of like, if you would just apply yourself, that will cause a kid to shut down right away. Because how many women in here would allow me to get away with saying this? If you would just apply yourself, you'd be thinner. Yeah, didn't think so. Because what's the implication? You're not even trying to lose weight. So we've got to drop. Those are all parenting anxiety words because your kids aren't living up to your expectations. But you can't do the best. Most of your kids are going to do the minimal work necessary. How many of those kids? Just to get by. And if you have the courage, you can say, you know what's brilliant about that? You're in middle school. You know, middle school grades don't count in middle school. So why would you do extra effort when you don't even care about what you're studying? You're brilliant enough to do the minimal work necessary just to get by. That's actually really smart. Because what I know in life is when you do care about something, you work really hard at it. You just don't care about anything I care about. And that's why I'm freaked out. True? So you've got to draw the distinction there. When your kids care about something, they can focus, they're disciplined, they're persistent. True? When they're playing video games or building with Legos, you don't have to tell them a second time. They can do it for days on end without sleeping. It's just when you ask them to do something, So we'll get to that in the next session, how to motivate them. So here's the hard part. I asked him to do A, B, and C. What's he going to do first? C. Why? I don't know. They're irritating. After he does C, what's he going to do? No, not A or B. He's going to do Z. I didn't ask you to do Z. Somewhere on the line from going to C to B, he walked by the bathroom and he thought, be interesting to take the toilet apart and not put it back together. How many of your kids do that stuff? This is really supremely important. Your kids have to follow their curiosity. Sometimes they have to take that toilet apart. And I know they're not going to do their chores, they're not going to do the homework, and you're going to have to talk to the teacher and say, I know you love my child. We didn't do homework last night. You know why? Because my son got really curious about something and actually built himself a robot. So I know he doesn't do that well in your class, but one day he's going to be like an AI genius, and we're going to retire wealthy because of him. Right now, he's not going to do a whole lot. He's probably going to be bad in class. But some nights I let him pursue his curiosity, right? That's that elevator story. Does that make sense? So for your compliant people out there, you would have had all your chores done by like 4:45. And you go to your parents and say, oh, can I have some more? But here's the thing. Your strong-willed kids have to do Z. See, people who do Z do cool things, like invent iPhones. Compliant rule followers, you never do anything cool in life, but you make sure these ship on time, and that's important too. So we need, you know what I'm saying. So, it was meant to be funny. But anyway, but it's true, right? You need both. So, finally, at 6:59 and 59 seconds, no, he does B. B was sweeping the floor. Your child's going to put the broom behind his back and go backwards, and you're going to be furious because you can't get all the crumbs on the floor that way when you're doing it. This is the appropriate way to do it. And at 6:59 and 59 seconds, he does A. And your appropriate response is, Robert, nice job doing your chores. This is what you're going to have to wrestle with. They're not going to do it the right way. I know some of you are like, well, that's just an excuse. I've done this a long time. That's how they do it. And what we eventually wrestled with Casey was, he stinks in our house. He's virtually useless for us. But outside the home, from the age of 12, he had a job, extremely reliable, worked really hard, and other people loved our son, even though we didn't. And we're raising him to be successful in the real world, and we wrestled with it, and you will have to wrestle with it because you have the other siblings who do all their chores the nice way, and they're all awesome, and teachers love them, and this one child is going to be like off to the side, and you have to know and trust that this child eventually is going to find his path, but it's going to be a very difficult path, and they're going to touch a lot of hot stoves, but they're going to be successful. But if you don't do that, if you stay on them, you will crush their spirits, they will become very defiant, and they will eventually shut down.